This is Smiles TV. Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. I'm your host, Stephanie Anthony Miles, and thank you for tuning in again. We have a wonderful broadcast for you today. We'll be talking with Mrs. Lynne M. Jackson, the founder and president of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. You don't want to miss this broadcast. Stay tuned for more smiles, and remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. We'll be right back with more smiles. Sandifer and Associates, LLC, is located at 708 West Main Street in Belleville, Illinois. The sole proprietor is Attorney Jocelyn Sandifer. Attorney Sandifer and her associates, Attorney Marche Belk and Attorney Cherie Davis, are powerful, caring advocates for their clients. If you need legal assistance dealing with child support, family domestic law, federal and state criminal defense, personal injury, or more, contact Sandifer and Associates, located at 708 West Main Street in Belleville, Illinois. They service both Illinois and Missouri. The phone number is 618-489-1234.
Lynne M. Jackson is a great-great-granddaughter of Dred Scott, also founder and president of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. The goal of the foundation is to promote the commemoration, education, and reconciliation of our histories. Dred Scott and his wife Harriet were pioneers in the American Civil Rights Movement. Their case, the landmark Dred Scott decision of 1857, became a major catalyst for the Civil War. Through the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation, Lynne has dedicated herself to casting a new light on the history of her ancestors and the landmark Dred Scott decision. For the last 16 years, she has traveled across the United States, sharing the story of her ancestors, their case, and how it has impacted our nation. Under Lynne's direction, the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation raised $250,000, commissioned and erected a life-size statue of Dred Scott and his wife Harriet. She has appeared in numerous media outlets including C-SPAN, NPR, Netflix, HBO, PBS, Time, Newsweek, and featured in 4 documentaries. Highlights of her volunteer work include Sunday School Superintendent, VBS Director, Prison Ministry, Community Women Against Hardship, Black Women's Entrepreneurial Network, and others. Lynne and her husband Brian now reside in the St. Louis area and have 2 grown children. Welcome back to Smiles Television Talk Show. Have you heard of the Dred Scott case? Dred Scott was an enslaved African-American man who, along with his wife, Harriet, unsuccessfully sued for freedom for themselves and their 2 daughters in the Dred Scott versus Sanford case of 1857, popularly known as the Dred Scott decision. We're talking with Lynne Jackson, a great-great-granddaughter of Dred Scott. Lynne Jackson, how are you?
Stephanie, I'm doing great, and I'm always happy to be on your show. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, thank you so much for being so gracious to come back. And since we talked last, you've moved. You're in a new location. Tell us about your location and what's going on out there.
We're very excited because right now it's not permanent, but we have a very lovely temporary place for another year or so at the Chesterfield Mall. And Chesterfield Mall in St. Louis is being renovated, but they are allowing nonprofits and small businesses to rent the space in the area that's not being renovated yet. So we are there and having a wonderful time. It is absolutely amazing. It's a blessing.
Lynne, one thing I heard was that the annual Fleming McLean Lecture Constitution Day series was overwhelmingly supported at Mizzou. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the fact that you were just there again in September?
Yes, I was. I was very honored to be the lecture speaker this year. And one of the nice things about it is that they normally have a very modest crowd, but they said we broke some records. Instead of having about 80 to 100 people, we had over 250. And it was for the Constitution Day lecture, but also it was part of our programming because Dred Scott died on Constitution Day, which was September 17th. And so, and coincident with that, I got to talk a lot more about the Constitution in regards to his case. And that's always a lot of fun because sharing his story is foundational, but taking those side roads that attend to his story are also a lot of fun. And we had a wonderful time. I appreciate the invitation and hope I get to go back.
Lynn, COVID changed a lot for a lot of people and organizations over the last couple of years. How has COVID impacted you and the foundation?
Well, obviously, we weren't able to do a lot of things like everybody else. And we were 2 weeks away from having our third Dred Scott Freedom Awards dinner. 2 weeks away. And to this day, we haven't had it yet. So we're hoping that things have truly settled down and then we'll be able to have it in 2024. But that's our major fundraiser, really, and it's every 2 years. So that was different. The other thing it impacted was our other biannual program, which is the Dred Scott Reconciliation Conference. Now, that conference was supposed to be on opposite years, but this year we are going to have it, and it's going to be on October 29th at the First Baptist Church of Ferguson. They've agreed to host it for us, and we have some exceptional guests there. Now, some of your audience may know that we have a group called Dred Scott Presents Sons and Daughters of Reconciliation. And those are individuals whose ancestors, like Dred Scott, were famous. They impacted our history. So we're talking about people like Thomas Jefferson and Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King and just all kinds of people. So this time we're going to have, again, a repeat, which is the Jefferson Davis's great-great-grandson, but our new friends will be Will Ford III and Matt Lockett. And these two gentlemen have an incredible story about how God brought them together and how their work has impacted reconciliation, as well as our stories overlap and Jefferson Davis's story overlaps and the pastor of the church's story overlaps. So we're calling this event Historicity and Synchronicity.
Wow.
So we hope people will come to that, and you can register at our website, which is dredscottlives.org. And registration is open right now. Lunch is included, and I'll tell you, you will not be disappointed. I'm over the moon excited about it. I really am.
Wow, that should be an excellent affair. Tell us a little bit about how the Reconciliation Conference started, and give us a little meat about the purpose.
So Sons and Daughters of Reconciliation was not intended to be the focus of the Reconciliation Conference, but it has turned out to be. We also work with the descendants of Justice Roger B. Tawney, who was the judge who read the Dred Scott Descendant. We work with descendants of the Blow family who owned Dred Scott. And these are some amazing people today in 2020. We are all there to share our stories and how they connect, but also how we're able to work together and connect in this day and age, as opposed to the animosity and adversities that our ancestors had to go through.
Lynn, recently you just made a new discovery, new revelation. Share that with us, if you will.
Well, I'm always interacting with people from all over. And one of my friends in Minnesota at Fort Snelling area, where Dred and Harriet met and got married, sent me an email and told me something that I had never heard before. And that is that Dred and Harriet were married in Minnesota at Fort Snelling. Now, we did know that. And we also knew that they actually had a wedding. But what I did not know is that they were married at the water tower at Fort Snelling. And this was a very, important edifice there, probably a social place as well. I have actually been in the water tower and gone up. And I had no idea that this was the site of their wedding. And
Wow.
So that was pretty exciting because they literally had a justice of the peace who was Harriet's owner. And her owner gave her to Dr. Emerson. So she and Dred could live together as man and wife, which they did under Dr. Emerson's quarters. So to find out that not only did they get married, which was illegal, they had a wedding, which is pretty much unheard of. And now I know the site of that wedding. It's pretty amazing and it's very exciting. So
wow,
you're the second person to hear that.
How intriguing is that? So, Lynn, is there anything else you would like to share with us that we have not had an opportunity to touch on? Any bits of information that you want to share with the Smiles audience?
Absolutely. There's two other things. One is that I want to remind everybody that we are creating a new memorial monument for Dred Scott at Calvary Cemetery. And we raised some money for it, but we were very blessed to get a grant from the Mellon Foundation. In fact, as of today, 2 grants. And that will more than be sufficient, I'm sure, to cover the cost of the edifice. So we expect to be able to have that 10 by 10 foot by 9 feet high Black granite edifice with his image on it at Calvary, and it should be installed between March and May of 2023. So we're inviting people to come out, and hopefully we'll have a great time. His current headstone only is 28 inches high by 24 inches wide. We're very grateful to have it. It was donated by a member of the Blow family descendant, but this one will be able to be seen from afar, and we'll have the history of his story on it as well.
And I know we don't have a lot of time, but what's coming to my mind is information about the stamp. How's that progressing?
Well, it's not in my control to get a stamp for Dred, except that we do have a Dred Scott stamp campaign. And if people would go to that same website, dredscottlives.org, they can sign the petition online, but I would prefer if they would download the form, get multiple signatures, and mail it to us. And that would be the best way to help us impress the powers that be that there should be a Dred Scott stamp, because there never has been one. And the only other thing I would share, if we have a minute, is that we've been having some wonderful exhibits at our new location. And we just finished Faces of Dred Scott, which will be at the Law Library at the Circuit Court in March of 2023. And the next and last exhibit this year, everyone's invited to come out to Chesterfield Mall at 40 and Clarkson, 40 and Olive, and see the Anna Malone exhibit. Linda Nance has curated that, and we're going to host it. And it will be there from October 22nd to December 3rd.
Thank you so much, Lynn. You have been such a gracious guest. And I'm going to ask you again, when you come back to Smiles Television again, if you get the opportunity.
Let me think. Oh, I'm sure I will. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you, Lynn. I love you dearly. And one more time, give your website one more time for contact information.
Okay, it's www.dred, D-R-E-D, Scott lives, L-I-V-E-S.org, dredscottlives.org.
We want to thank you, Lynn, for being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show. And we want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Lynn M. Jackson, great-great-granddaughter of Dred Scott.
God bless you, Stephanie.
God bless you. Remember, only what you do for Christ will last. And Jesus is the Lord be magnified. Keep smiling. You look better when you smile.
The Smiles Television Talk Show wants to showcase your business, organization, church, and activities. If you have an interest in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show, or if you have any show ideas, contact Stephanie Anthony Miles at SmilesTV777@gmail.com. You may also call 618-741-3770. Tell your friends to subscribe to the Smiles YouTube channel. Let Smiles TV increase your reach. Remember, you look better with Smiles. Are you looking for an insured and bonded residential or commercial contractor? On Time Contracting, owned by Ali McDowell, is just a phone call away. On Time Contracting operates with the utmost integrity and quantities to complete your project right on time. Residential or commercial, exterior or interior, roofing, siding, flooring, you name it. If you want your project completed for the price quoted and at the time quoted, contact On Time Contracting. Good, quality, professional work guaranteed to be completed on time. Call 618-567-3591. No project is too large or too small. On Time Contracting. Call On Time Contracting today.